I'm really, really excited to talk with you today and jump into consciousness because I've spent the last week or so, as I told you off recording, just learning as much as I can about consciousness. My partner's really into it. She's way further ahead on understanding it than me. And I wanna seek to understand too. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it and see if you mirror what I've been watching and hearing. So for you, what is consciousness? What can you tell the audience about it?
The easiest way to describe it is awareness. I think that's a word that people can understand. And sometimes consciousness has a tie that's a little bit woo-woo-ish, and people just think consciousness and meditation, which it's a part of consciousness, but just the word awareness is a really good way to describe the word. Now, with consciousness, as I like to talk about the duality of life, you have to remember unconsciousness. And to really get a sense of what consciousness is, you have to remember when we were kids, when we were born, we were in that unconscious realm. We were just looking at the world and we were basing everything off of the environment that is thrown at us. And through that unconsciousness, we build awareness from the environment. We build that ego, and then consciousness starts to arise. So if you think of unconsciousness, we're sitting as kids in this realm of unconsciousness. Then the ego starts to develop a little bit into consciousness from, again, the environment, our senses, what we see. It's like a hypnotic state. We're fed this information, and that builds a small ego. That ego starts to build that consciousness. So if you think of two bubbles, there's a small bubble of consciousness that's starting to build just above the unconscious realm. As we go into life, we start to provide more order to the chaos. So consciousness is order to the unconscious chaos, and that bubble of consciousness starts to build. That ego starts to fill more conscious items into it. The stronger the ego, the more conscious we become. Now, the only issue with this is if we become too conscious and too inflated with the ego into consciousness, then the ego starts to, we'll say, flow or rise into the conscious realm and kind of be disconnected from the unconscious realm. The unconscious realm has a lot of suppressed thoughts, a lot of suppressed feelings, also things that come to us. It's an important realm, but as we build in that stronger ego, the unconsciousness is lost in a sense. So if you've ever heard of the hero's journey, that's a common story. That's when somebody begins to lower their ego back into the unconscious realm while leaving their bubble of consciousness that they built. And then through that, as the ego gets to a more balanced point between consciousness and unconsciousness, the ego takes that integration and starts to build more consciousness from the unconscious. Some of those suppressed thoughts are taken on. And in that phase, that's really that wholeness that I try to describe. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I'm a very image-based person, so my brain was just, creating these image examples of the different spaces. So where does our sense of self sit in the realm of all these things?
The sense of self is truly the middle ground of the conscious and unconscious. If you think of the ego, you could think of it as that ball moving back and forth. Started unconsciously, started building consciousness. It gets really strong. Then it has to go into the underworld and start to integrate the unconsciousness and get towards that center point, which is the self, which is that self-actualization, the purpose, what our mission is in life, who we truly are, because we're all different. We all have different likes and interests and things that we enjoy doing, different habits and hobbies. And it isn't until somebody integrates their full being into one, when life, kind of makes sense in that.